Welcome to Education Wave Success Made Easy Sexual Reproduction in Flowering Plants. So, the topic is pollination by wind. So, as we talked about this slide in the last video, how these agents are basically helping with the pollination process. So, for example, I want these anthers or these pollen grains to land on my stigma, right? But this won't happen on its own. I need some agents. It could happen by wind. It could be happen if the plant is submerged under water. So the pollination occurs by water. Okay. So these are wind and water are abiotic factors. And for that, the flowers do not have to be colorful, give any nectar in return. But for the biotic factors, if the animals are involved, so they need some rewards in return. Like if I'm going to pollinate you, if you want the pollination process to occur, you will have to give me something as a reward. Okay. And this reward can be anything. They space inside the ovary so that the animal or the moth could lay egg inside it. Or they might need something as a reward as nectar, right? So these are the pollination ways how we take the help of these agents for pollination to occur. Now, the pollination by water is very important because if you talk about the plants which are submerged underwater, for example, this is my plant which is submerged in the water. They are totally dependent on water so that this water can help these gametes to carry towards the female so that the fertilization could occur. Now you will know that these lower plant, all these lower plants, it could be algae, it could be bryophytes, it could be pteridophytes. All these lower plants are totally dependent on water for the reproduction process to occur. Okay, the life cycle is incomplete if the water is not given to them. So, this is believed, particularly for some bryophytes and pteridophytes, that the distribution is limited because of the need for water, for the transport of male gametes and fertilization to occur. And this is the reason you will find that these bryophytes, algae, pteridophytes, some where they will not find water, the life cycle could not complete, right? So only the requirement is water here. So the case is in Vallisneria and Hydrola, which grow in fresh water. You need to notice that these two are fresh water, and the marine sea grasses such as Zoostera, it is a marine water, found in marine water, right? Now the case is very fascinating here. So what happens in Vallisneria? This is the example of Vallisneria. So this is my female flower of Vallisneria. This reaches all above the surface. See, this is the surface, and the flower, this whole plant is submerged underwater. But somehow this flower reaches all above the water surface, and this male flower, this is my male plant which is carrying the male inflorescence, the pollen grains, they will also release, and this male flowers, they will reach somehow above the water, and on the surface of this water the pollination takes place. Okay, and this is how the in Vallisneria, this female flower reaches the surface of water by long stalk, and male flowers, or you could also say the pollen grains, released on the surface of water, on the surface of water. And they are carried passively by water current. Some of them eventually reach the female flowers and the stigma, and this is how the pollination occurs in Vallisneria, right? But the case is very different in Zoostera. Unlike Vallisneria, in Vallisneria, what happens is the female flower also reaches the above the water, and the pollen grains also reaches above the water, right? For example, this is my water. This is the level of my water. Here also, this is the level of my water. But in Zoostera, what happens if this is my plant? It is submerged inside water, right? This was also my plant, which was submerged inside water. But somehow the flowers of Vallisneria, they reach all above the surface of water currents. But in Zoostera, the case is not like that. In the female flowers remain submerged. For example, this is my female flower. It remains submerged in the water. And the pollen grains release inside the water itself. Okay, the release is also occurring inside the water. This whole thing is occurring inside the water, right? So Zoostera, they do not need to come up above the water surface. The whole thing, this whole fertilization takes place inside the water. Okay. Now there are some cases, there are some adaptations. For example, in some species, the pollen grains might look like a ribbon shaped. This is called adaptation. Okay, so they are adapting, these pollen grains are adapting themselves. For example, if it is in a shape of ribbon, it could easily be carried away with the water current and it could reach the female stigma, right? They are carried passively inside the water. Some of them reach the stigma and they achieve pollination. In most of the water pollinated species, these pollen grains are covered with a covering, and that is called mucilage covering. For example, if I could draw it, there is a covering called mucilage covering. Okay, this is called mucilaginous covering. Okay. So this was the Zoostera, which is a marine type example. Now, what happens in majority of aquatic plants? In the majority of aquatic, for example, water hyacinth, and this is called water lily. These flowers emerge above the level of water. They emerge above the level of water, and they are pollinated by insects, or you could say the flies, or it could be by wind, right? Just like land plants. So you need to remember that unlike Vallisneria and Zoostera, water hyacinth and water lily, they are also aquatic plants. So you might confuse it with the water pollination. The pollination here is occurring by the help of insects or it could be by wind. Okay. So thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe my video.